Thank you, Chairperson Dr. Teresa. At this time, 7.05, discipline update, which has been added to the agenda as a presentation that I would like to share at this time. So please know, for those who paid attention to our work session this afternoon, we had a fairly robust discussion, and I appreciate the opportunities to speak to some of the, not only the challenges, but the opportunities associated with school discipline and what that means. So what we heard this evening already is that discipline is not an isolated incident. It involves relationships. It involves rules, expectations. It involves accountability. What happens when we set a goal and when we achieve it, what happens when we don't. It also involves other complex matters like mental health, like social emotional learning, like professional development. The complexities of a school district are myriad and many, and most in this room certainly understand those complexities. But I want to share some of the progress that we've made, some of the challenges that still exist, and to share with our community a GCPS discipline update to this point. Given what we've heard, I want to, first of all, bring us back to June 2022. The Board of Education, our esteemed board, approved revisions to policy JCD, the Student Conduct Behavior Code, for those who are not aware. That maintains the district's longstanding expectations of positive student behavior and the expectation as such. The code includes 13 rule categories that define potential infractions, and we've discussed that earlier today. The revisions, however, that were made to policy JCD did not significantly change behavioral expectations expressed within each rule. However, in August of this year, 2022, the board approved a new policy. It was policy JCDI. For those who are not familiar, that board's theory of action for change, in other words, is policy JCDI to improve student behavior and outcomes. Now, let me be clear, improving student behavior is the goal. The outcomes should be associated with said improved behavior. That is the goal. Policy JCDI outlines foundational tenets regarding what we as a school district are doing to approach student discipline, as well as our continuing, ongoing commitment to maintain what we refer to as a multi-tiered system of support, that's otherwise known as MTSS, to implement positive behavior and intervention and support, which we've also heard from our leaders from the Parkview Cluster, and to employ restorative practices. And that's a simple way of saying, when I, as a student or an adult, do harm, if I damage the relationship between another person, whether it be a student, a colleague, that I should work towards restoring that relationship in a way that will allow us to improve the relationship that has been damaged. That being said, it is this work that's grounded in several bullet points. One is to maintain high expectations for student behavior. That's an expectation. That includes not only behavior, but student, staff, conduct, how we treat each other. The second is to codify it in policy. When we say something is codified in policy, that means it's expected to be accomplished, and we hold ourselves accountable for that accomplishment. Our blueprint is aligned with the expectations for multi-tiered systems of support, as well as positive behavioral interventions and supports. We also ensure that we are proactively working to the extent possible with professional development for our teachers, our paraprofessionals, all of our educators, from our leaders at the administrative level, from principal to assistant principal to central office, to support our behavioral expectations and engage in what we also refer to as social emotional learning strategies. Now, I know that SEL, as it is often referred to, sometimes gets a bad reputation, and the question becomes why. SEL is simply social emotional learning, and it implies that in order for us to learn academically, which is our goal, we want our students to be the best and brightest at what they do based on what they know and are able to accomplish academically, socially, and emotionally, but academically certainly. But socially, social emotional learning means that we want to help our students be able to manage their emotions, to be able to self-correct, to be able to lead with empathy, to understand what it's like to walk in others' shoes so that you can address others' needs. That's students and staff. That's behavior that's often taught at home, but sometimes it's taught differently in different homes. So we want to make sure we're providing a level of clarity and certainty, and so we're offering this way of learning beyond teaching our students how to solve algebraic equations, to read, to write, and certainly to conduct themselves in a positive way. Our goal now is to guarantee that we appropriately address individuals who are exhibiting negative behaviors, and particularly those behaviors that are illegal, dangerous, and or disruptive to fellow human beings and to property. Since the start of this school year, we've intentionally implemented strategies to support our vision for student behavior and discipline responses that included, but were not limited to, opening the school year with our first 3 days of focusing on teaching our students, teaching them the desired behaviors, the behaviors that we expect, teaching conflict resolution strategies. Again, these are skills that we would expect each and every one of our adults to master, but we don't always see that. Even in our adults, if we teach and expect and hold others accountable, especially at the youngest level, they'll begin to learn and practice those lessons as they grow older, and they'll become part of just how they view and respond to the world around them. That's what teaching and learning is all about. That's what our work in Gwinnett County Public Schools is, making sure that academics, social, emotional learning are aligned. So we established a scheduled time for social, emotional learning and advisement lessons for our students at least once per week, practicing a warm welcome, making sure that when students come into the classroom, again, you heard examples of that today from our teachers, that they know that when they're in a classroom with one of our teachers or our educators, they feel that they belong. They feel that they're cared for. They feel that they're listened to. They feel that they can contribute to the learning environment itself. And when they leave the room, there's an optimistic closing that I'm leaving a place that I feel comfortable. That means I'm more likely to want to come back the next day and the next day. And I say that because at one point in time earlier in this year, and this is my close to 15th month in this role, and when I first began, I recognized very clearly that there were 4 or 5 incidents that were being administered in a classroom based on student behavior, and those behaviors communicated a need. Those behaviors, by and large, were tardy, disruptive behavior, failure to follow instructions, and absent without leave. Those were the most frequently administered disciplinary offenses of our middle school and high school students last year. That tells us something. That tells us that, yes, they were not following directions. That's for sure. But it also tells us there was another place where they would rather be, not in the classroom. Not every student, but some students who did not want to be there. Why is that? Now, this is not to place blame on anyone, on me, our board, our teachers. This is to say, let's listen to our students, as we heard. Let's listen to our families, because they're telling us everything that we need to know. And now, how do we respond? And we're responding. Now, it may not be in the way that is comfortable for all, but it is a way that we found that is not only research, but it's evidence-based. And we're just getting started. We are seeing some results that are promising, but I only say they're promising if we can sustain them. And so with that, we've also conducted universal screening, making sure we understand where our students are academically, socially, and emotionally for wellness and behavior indicators for 130,000 of our students. As the saying goes, start where you are, but don't stay there. It is best if we know exactly where you are so that we can help you get to where you need to go academically, socially, and emotionally. We're implementing tiered behavioral supports for students who may need less support and other students who may need greater levels of support, because that's what equity means. We address individual needs when those needs arise. Everyone on this dais has a different need. If we applied the same strategy to each, it may not allow us to see the desired results. And in some way, I believe we're seeing some of that happen already. Enhancing our MTSS data platform to help us facilitate those referrals for children who may need additional support. They may need to talk with a social worker or meet with a counselor. Partnering with external mental health service providers to support every high school. We are seeing evidence and examples of behavior today that we did not see 2 years ago to the same degree. Yes, we are seeing students who are doing harm to others. We are seeing students who are doing harm to themselves. That is not normal behavior. And I define normal as what most people do most of the time. We are doing our best to help our children be as healthy and as well as they can be so they can learn and achieve at increasingly higher levels. What you're also seeing, the discipline action on this slide, is the discipline data that in its current state in Gwinnett County Public Schools. These are the numbers as we have identified them. It does not mean that this is where we are staying. It means this is where we are currently. Starting of the school year through September 30th is the time frame. If we look at the first row from 2018 through 2022, the asterisk of 2020 implies that that is a year that we just do not compare the same data because that was at the height of our pandemic. The percentage of students with office discipline referrals, which typically implies that students have done something that they shouldn't have, that leads them to be removed from the classroom setting. We've seen a decrease to 3.25% of our students. The percentage of students who've received an in-school suspension, which is typically a behavior that is exhibited by a student that leads the adult in the room and those in the room to believe that student needs to be in another setting away from that classroom. Percentage of students, that percentage has gone down. Now, that's the right direction. At the same time, our goal is to sustain that for all of the right reasons. The behaviors should be indicating what our data show. Percentage of students with OSS, otherwise known as out-of-school suspension. Again, that implies that a student has exhibited a behavior that leads us to believe that student needs to be away from others. That number has also decreased in 2022. And for the most serious of behaviors that are exhibited towards other students or other individuals within the school setting, or severe damage to property, would result or could result in a percentage of students who have been recommended for tribunal. That number is also down. Now, hear me when I say the goal. To our members of our board, I shared this with you already. Our goal is not simply to reduce the numbers for reducing numbers' sake. The goal is that we're doing this as a true reflection of behaviors that we don't want to see being extinguished, the behaviors that we want to see being increased. That is the art and science of teaching. We're just getting started in the more complex behaviors that we're attempting to see, the longer that it might take for us to see this happen in a way that is sustainable. But I wanted to offer this as greater levels of context. I understand what we've been hearing and seeing, and I take all of that very seriously. We're listening to our teachers, we're listening to our paraprofessionals, listening to our constituents, those of whom have communicated with our board members, listening to our students, equally as important as we heard this evening. Our goal is to continue reviewing the data from this year, last year, and making comparisons, making adjustments, and making sure that the behaviors that we see are the direct result of the relationships that we're establishing and strengthening, also the teaching that we're doing and how our students can learn and achieve at increasingly higher levels. That concludes my discipline update, and I thank you for your time.